The shrill ring of the telephone pierced the silence of Olivia's apartment, its echoes reverberating off the stark white walls. Her heart raced, pounding in her chest as if trying to escape. She had been sitting at her desk, immersed in work, when the unexpected sound shattered her concentration. Olivia's hand trembled as she reached for the phone. Something about its insistent ring filled her with a sense of foreboding. She had spent years carefully constructing a life of stability and predictability, far removed from the chaos of her past. Now, that carefully maintained equilibrium felt suddenly fragile. "Hello?" she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. The voice on the other end belonged to a stranger. Yet it carried a weight of familiarity that made Olivia's blood run cold. It was a nurse from St. Mary's Hospital, calling about her sister, Camilla. Sister. A word Olivia had not associated with anyone in 27 years, as the nurse spoke, explaining that Camilla was in the hospital and asking for Olivia. A flood of memories crashed through the mental barriers Olivia had so carefully constructed. Flashes of a turbulent childhood flickered through her mind, screaming matches between her parents, slammed doors, and tearful goodbyes. The day her mother left with Camilla, leaving Olivia behind with their father. The years of silence that followed. Olivia's grip on the phone tightened. She had built a life without family. Without the pain and uncertainty they brought. The thought of stepping back into that world filled her with dread. Yet, a small part of her, a part she had long tried to silence, stirred with curiosity. Why now? After all these years, why had Camilla reached out? The nurse's voice faded into background noise as Olivia wrestled with her decision. Her instinct for self-preservation warred against a long-buried sense of familial duty. She had spent so long convincing herself she did not need family, that she was better off alone. But now, faced with this unexpected call to action, Olivia found herself questioning everything she had believed about her life and her past. As she hung up the phone, Olivia's apartment seemed suddenly too quiet, too empty. The decision she faced loomed large, threatening to upset the careful balance of her life. She stood, moving to the window, gazing out at the city below. Somewhere out there, in a hospital bed, lay a sister she had not seen in nearly 3 decades. A sister who, for reasons Olivia could not yet fathom, had decided to reach out after all this time. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across Olivia's living room. As darkness fell, she remained by the window, lost in thought. The city lights blinked on one by one, a constellation of lives interconnected yet separate. Olivia had always felt comfortable in that separation, but now, for the first time in years, she felt the weight of her isolation. The sterile scent of disinfectant assaulted Olivia's senses as she stepped into the hospital's main entrance. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a harsh glow, making the white walls seem to close in around her. She had spent the night tossing and turning. Her mind a battleground of conflicting emotions, before finally deciding to come. As Olivia made her way through the maze-like corridors, the rhythmic beeping of heart monitors and the hushed whispers of staff created an eerie backdrop to her tumultuous thoughts. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if her body was physically resisting the impending confrontation with her past. Turning a corner, Olivia froze. There, pacing nervously at the end of the hallway, was a woman she barely recognized yet knew instantly. Camilla. The years had changed her, lines of worry etched into her face, but there was no mistaking those eyes, their mother's eyes. For a moment, neither woman moved. The air between them crackled with tension, decades of unspoken words and buried emotions threatening to explode. Camilla took a hesitant step forward, her hand half raised in greeting or supplication. Olivia couldn't tell which. As Camilla drew closer, a familiar scent cut through the hospital's antiseptic air. It was the perfume their mother had always worn, now clinging to Camilla like a ghost from the past. The fragrance unlocked a flood of memories Olivia had long suppressed: summer days in the garden, bedtime stories, and the day it all fell apart. The sisters stood face to face, strangers bound by blood and shared history. Camilla spoke first, her voice trembling with a mixture of relief and desperation. She explained their mother's condition, the urgent need for a transplant, and how Olivia was their last hope. Olivia listened in stony silence, her face a mask of indifference that belied the storm raging within. As Camilla pleaded, Olivia's resentment, carefully nurtured over years of abandonment, bubbled to the surface. Her responses were clipped, laced with bitterness that made Camilla flinch. Their voices rose, echoing off the stark walls. Other visitors and staff cast wary glances their way, but the sisters were oblivious to anything but their own pain. Old wounds were reopened, accusations flew, and questions that had festered for years finally found voice. Throughout their heated exchange, the steady beeping of nearby monitors served as a grim reminder of why they were there. It punctuated their argument, a relentless countdown to a decision Olivia wasn't sure she could make. As their confrontation reached its peak, a nurse approached, asking them to keep their voices down. The interruption deflated their anger, leaving both women drained and uncertain. They retreated to opposite ends of the corridor, the physical distance between them a stark representation of the emotional chasm that had yet to be bridged. Olivia leaned against the wall, her head spinning. She had come seeking answers, but now found herself faced with even more questions. What had really torn their family apart? And more pressingly, could she set aside decades of hurt to save the woman who had left her behind? As the hospital bustled around them, Olivia and Camilla stood in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The decision that lay before them would not just determine their mother's fate, but the future of their fractured family as well. The door to Lisa's hospital room creaked open, the sound unnaturally loud in the hushed corridor. Olivia stood frozen at the threshold, her hand still gripping the cold metal handle. The steady beep of monitors filled the air, a rhythmic reminder of the fragility of life. Olivia's gaze fell upon the figure in the bed. And for a moment, she struggled to reconcile this frail, unconscious woman with the mother she remembered. Lisa's skin was pale, almost translucent, a stark contrast to the crisp white sheets that enveloped her. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, each one seeming more labored than the last.
Hey there, enjoying the story? Subscribe now, like and comment to catch all the upcoming emotions.
Hesitantly, Olivia approached the bedside. Her eyes were drawn to Lisa's hands, resting limply atop the blanket. Those fingers, once strong and capable, now appeared thin and delicate. Unbidden, a memory surfaced of those same hands gently stroking her hair, comforting her after a childhood nightmare. The recollection sent a jolt of pain through Olivia's heart, a reminder of what she had lost, or what had been taken from her. A soft knock at the door broke the spell. The doctor entered, his face a mask of professional concern. He spoke in low, measured tones, explaining Lisa's condition and the urgent need for a transplant. As his words washed over her, Olivia felt a growing sense of unreality. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't be the only compatible donor. It was too much, too soon. The doctor's revelation hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Olivia's mind raced, grappling with the weight of the decision before her. On one side lay familial duty, the ingrained obligation to help blood relatives. On the other, a deep-seated need for self-preservation, born from years of perceived abandonment and neglect. As she stood there, torn between these competing impulses, another question began to form in Olivia's mind. Why had her father never told her the whole truth about the separation? There had always been gaps in his explanation, areas he had skirted around or glossed over. Now, faced with the gravity of her mother's condition, those missing pieces seemed more significant than ever. A soft, melancholic melody drifted in from somewhere down the hall, its bittersweet notes a fitting accompaniment to the tumultuous emotions swirling within Olivia. She found herself wondering if she could ever forgive Lisa for leaving, for choosing to walk away and stay away for so many years. The doctor's words echoed in her mind. Without the transplant, Lisa had only weeks to live. The finality of that statement crashed over Olivia like a wave, leaving her feeling adrift and uncertain. How could she be expected to save someone who had chosen not to save her? The irony of the situation was not lost on her. As she stood by the hospital bed, watching the shallow rise and fall of her mother's chest, Olivia felt the weight of the past pressing down upon her. The decision she faced was not just about a medical procedure, it was about confronting decades of hurt, resentment, and unanswered questions. The monitors continued their steady beeping, a countdown to a decision Olivia wasn't sure she was ready to make. Outside the window, the world continued on, oblivious to the drama unfolding within these sterile walls. But for Olivia, time seemed to stand still as she grappled with the impossible choice before her. The hospital corridor echoed with the sound of hurried footsteps. Olivia turned to see her father, Richard, striding towards her, his face etched with worry and something else, guilt, perhaps. In his arms, he clutched a weathered cardboard box, its edges frayed and corners softened by time. Richard's arrival brought with it a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The air seemed to thicken, heavy with unspoken words and long-buried truths. Olivia's eyes fixed on the box, her curiosity piqued despite the turmoil of emotions roiling within her. As Richard set the box down on a nearby chair, a faint scent wafted from its confines, a mixture of old paper and faded perfume. The fragrance hit Olivia like a physical force, catapulting her back to childhood memories she had thought long forgotten. Summers spent in her grandmother's attic, poring over old photographs and letters. The scent of her mother's perfume lingering in empty rooms after she had gone. With trembling hands, Richard began to sift through the contents of the box. The rustle of aged papers filled the air, punctuated by the occasional muffled sob that he tried, and failed, to suppress. Olivia watched, her heart racing, as her father unearthed document after document, each seeming to carry the weight of secrets long kept. As Richard spoke, his voice low and strained, Olivia felt the foundations of her world begin to crumble. The story he told, of lies, manipulation, and misunderstandings, challenged everything she had believed about her family's past. The mother she had resented for abandoning them emerged as a more complex figure, trapped by circumstances Olivia had never known existed. The truth, as it unfolded, was far more painful and complicated than the simple narrative of abandonment Olivia had clung to for so long. Richard's revelations painted a picture of a family torn apart not by a single act of betrayal, but by a series of misguided decisions and unspoken fears. Olivia listened, her mind reeling as she tried to reconcile this new information with the version of events she had lived with for decades. How could she have been so wrong? How could her father have kept these secrets for so long? The realization that her life had been built on a foundation of half-truths and omissions left her feeling unmoored, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, as Richard continued to speak. Pulling out old letters and photographs to corroborate his story, Olivia found herself wondering what other secrets might still be lurking in the shadows of her family's past. Each revelation seemed to lead to more questions, more doubts. The sound of papers being shuffled and Richard's choked sobs created a somber soundtrack to this unveiling of truth. Olivia felt tears of her own beginning to form, a mix of anger, confusion, and a deep, aching sadness for the years lost to misunderstanding. Richard's confession that he had lied to protect her landed like a physical blow. Olivia struggled to reconcile the idea of protection with the years of resentment and pain she had endured. How could keeping her in the dark about her mother's true circumstances be considered protection? As the full weight of Richard's revelations settled over them, Olivia found herself at a crossroads. The truth she had sought for so long now lay before her, but it offered no easy answers. Instead, it presented her with a new set of challenges, forcing her to reevaluate not just her past, but her present and future as well. The hospital bustled around them, life continuing its relentless march forward. But for Olivia and Richard, time seemed to stand still in that corridor, the space between them filled with the echoes of long-held secrets finally brought to light. The steady hum of hospital machinery filled the room as Olivia sat by her mother's bedside, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The revelations of the past few days had left her feeling unmoored, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. As she watched Lisa's chest rise and fall with each labored breath, Olivia grappled with the weight of the decision before her. Suddenly, Lisa's eyelids fluttered. Olivia leaned forward, her heart racing as she watched her mother's eyes slowly open, focusing on her with a clarity that had been absent for days. The moment Olivia had both dreaded and longed for had arrived, a lucid conversation with the woman who had been absent from her life for so long. Lisa's gaze locked onto Olivia's, years of regret and longing reflected in her tired eyes. Silent tears began to roll down Lisa's weathered cheeks, each droplet seeming to carry the weight of countless missed moments and unspoken words. The sight stirred something deep within Olivia, a complex mixture of pain, anger, and a long-buried desire for connection. As Lisa struggled to speak, her voice barely above a whisper, Olivia found herself holding her breath. The words that followed were laden with years of remorse and a desperate plea for understanding. Lisa spoke of love that had never wavered, of circumstances that had spiraled beyond her control, and of the unbearable pain of separation. Olivia listened, her own emotions threatening to overwhelm her. The anger and resentment she had nursed for years clashed violently with a newfound understanding of the complex web of events that had torn their family apart. She found herself questioning everything she had believed about her mother, about her childhood, about the nature of love itself. In the background, a soft piano melody began to play from a nearby room, its gentle notes gradually swelling in intensity. The music seemed to underscore the emotional crescendo building between mother and daughter, adding a poignant backdrop to their long-overdue reunion. As Lisa's strength began to wane, the urgency of Olivia's decision pressed upon her with renewed force. The doctors had made it clear, without the transplant, Lisa's time was limited. Olivia found herself at a crossroads, torn between self-preservation and the possibility of redemption, not just for her mother, but for herself as well. The question loomed large in Olivia's mind: how far would she go to correct the mistakes of the past? Could she find it within herself to forgive not just her mother, but also the circumstances that had kept them apart? And if she did choose to save Lisa's life, what would it mean for her own future? As the piano music reached its emotional peak, Olivia gazed at her mother's fragile form. The woman before her was simultaneously a stranger and the most familiar person in the world. Years of missed birthdays, holidays, and everyday moments hung between them, a chasm that seemed both insurmountable and, paradoxically, on the verge of being bridged.
Hey there, enjoying the story? Subscribe now, like and comment to catch all the upcoming emotions.
Lisa's eyes began to close, her brief moment of lucidity fading. But before she slipped back into unconsciousness, she managed to whisper words that would echo in Olivia's mind long after. "I never stopped loving you, not for a second." Olivia's response came unbidden, a raw admission of the pain she had carried for so long. "Love should not hurt this much, mother." As silence once again fell over the room, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of monitors, Olivia found herself facing the most difficult decision of her life. The path to redemption lay before her, but the price it demanded was steep. As she sat there, holding her mother's frail hand, Olivia knew that whatever choice she made would irrevocably alter the course of both their lives. The antiseptic smell of the hospital room filled Olivia's nostrils as she slowly regained consciousness. Her eyelids felt heavy, and a dull ache pulsed through her body, a reminder of the surgery she had undergone. As her senses gradually sharpened, the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor became more pronounced, its steady cadence a reassuring sign of life. Olivia's decision to go through with the transplant had not come easily. It had been a choice fraught with conflicting emotions, old wounds, and the weight of years of misunderstanding. As she lay there, still groggy from the anesthesia, uncertainty gnawed at her. Had she made the right choice? Would it be enough to save Lisa? Outside her room, Olivia could hear the muffled sounds of her family's anxious waiting. Camila's hushed voice, Richard's pacing footsteps, all betrayed the tension that hung in the air. They were all there, united in their concern and hope, a family brought together by crisis after years of separation. As the hours ticked by, the truth about their family's separation had slowly unraveled. Each revelation had been like a piece of a complex puzzle, finally coming together to form a complete picture. The story that emerged was one of misunderstandings, pride, and fear, all conspiring to keep them apart. It was a narrative far more nuanced and painful than any of them had imagined. Olivia found herself grappling with this new reality. The mother she had resented for so long was not the villain she had believed her to be. The father she had relied on had kept secrets that had shaped the course of their lives. And Camila, the sister she had barely known, had been carrying her own burden of guilt and regret. As the first rays of morning sun began to filter through the hospital window, casting a warm glow across the sterile room, Olivia felt a shift within herself. The light seemed to symbolize more than just the start of a new day, it held the promise of a new beginning for all of them. The sound of the door opening broke through Olivia's contemplation. A doctor entered, his face unreadable as he approached her bed. The room fell silent, save for the steady beep of the heart monitor, as everyone held their breath, waiting for news about Lisa. As the doctor spoke, explaining the outcome of the surgeries, a wave of emotion washed over the room. Relief, joy, and a tentative hope mingled with the lingering fear and uncertainty. Lisa had survived the transplant, but the road ahead would be long and challenging. In that moment, as the news sank in, Olivia realized that the true test was only beginning. They had been given a second chance, but rebuilding their shattered family would require more than just a successful surgery. It would take time, patience, and a willingness to confront the painful truths that had kept them apart for so long. Camila's words, spoken softly but with intense emotion, hung in the air. "You gave us a second chance, Olivia." Olivia, her voice hoarse from the surgery, replied with a newfound understanding, "No, Camila. We gave ourselves a second chance." As the sun continued to rise, bathing the room in its warm light, Olivia closed her eyes. The steady beep of the heart monitor seemed to take on a new meaning, no longer just a sign of life, but a rhythm of possibility. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in years, it held the promise of healing, understanding, and perhaps, eventually, forgiveness. The family stood together, united by shared pain and hope, at the threshold of a new chapter. The secrets that had torn them apart had finally been unearthed, leaving them raw and vulnerable, but also open to the possibility of rebuilding. As they faced this new dawn, they did so not as individuals burdened by the past, but as a family tentatively stepping towards a shared future.